Hey, what's going on everybody? Kevin Walsh from Ninja Holistic Health and Fitness. I'm making a video for you today on the subject of genetically modified organisms, also known as GMOs. This is a very, very important topic to be informed on because GMOs are all through the food system in the United States and most people do not know it. So this is an informative piece for you. Basically, I'm going to show you what a GMO is, how they're created, and how you can avoid them because of the consequences associated with eating these foods over time. So, first things first, how prevalent are they in our food system? They're everywhere. 80% of all the processed and packaged foods in the United States have GMO ingredients. And the 5 main food crops that are GMO are corn, canola, cottonseed, soy, and sugar. And those are in almost everything. 90% and up of those 5 food crops are GMO. So when you're out to eat and you're getting something in a restaurant, or you're even at, say, like a Whole Foods and you're getting the buffet, these foods are in those buffets, are on the dinner menu. So if you're not careful, you're going to be eating these. And the reason that most people don't know about this issue is because there are no labeling requirements in the US. So as opposed to these countries right here, like Austria, Bulgaria, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Italy, Ireland, Japan, Luxembourg, Madeira, New Zealand, Poland, Romania, and Russia, who have all banned GMO crop cultivation, we're left kind of in the dark and we're not aware of this stuff because of the lack of labeling. There's 60 countries in total that have labeling of some sort in their food system. So we are one of the only industrialized nations that don't have that. This is why most people are in the dark and are eating it on a daily basis but don't know. And the reason that they're so bad, to get into how they're created here, GMOs are basically split in 2 categories. What a GMO is in a lab setting, there's DNA taken from one species that's injected into another. So for example, fish DNA, this was done in the late 90s, is extracted and then placed into a tomato. And this was, when it was done at the time, it was called the flavor saver tomato, and it was done for the sake of frost resistance. The problem is that there's collateral damage all through the DNA whenever you do something like this, because it's not natural for a pig and a fish to be interbred with each other. And as a result, when you put this in your body, there's massive inflammation, and we have no immune defense for it developed naturally. So we end up basically fighting the foods that come in, and we can very easily end up with autoimmune issues as a result of this. Our body is always going to recognize this as a foreign invader, not a normal food. No matter what's put out into the public or mainstream from Monsanto or companies that are selling this stuff, this is ultimately what goes on in the body physiologically every time you eat the foods. Now, the animal trials that have been done that have showed what actually happens when a GMO is eaten, there are 3 main ones right here. One was done in 1998 by Arpad Pusztai. Gilles Eric Seralini did this twice, 2011 and 2001, and there was one by the Russian Academy of Sciences. All 3 of these found basically that there was cancer, reproductive problems, immune system suppression, and changes in testicle size and color with the different pups that were eating these foods. And in the mice that were fed just regular organic foods, organic potatoes or organic soy, there were no health complications. So we know through these 3 peer-reviewed studies that there's major problems with GMO food, and to this day there are no peer-reviewed studies that show that it's safe. And one thing to note is the reason that there are so few of these studies that have been done is because Monsanto typically has a stranglehold over its seeds. So they do not like to have these things tested in independent laboratories because obviously the results don't look very good. And if the people knew about how bad this was, nobody would eat this stuff. So most of the testing is done by Monsanto themselves, and then basically they put out the foods from there. Now, with the one thing that's been done in the world in the way of the environment study-wise, in the early 2000s, the Indian farmers in Andhra Pradesh were basically convinced by Monsanto to take on their Bt toxin corn, as opposed to the conventional corn they've been growing for many centuries. And what happened was, when they adopted these methods of growing and these seeds, they ended up over this 3-year period with 30% smaller yields, completely ruined soil, and they weren't able to grow anything on that same soil after they were done growing the GMO corn. 1,800 dead sheep from grazing on these pastures, and it was 10% more expensive. So there's no intrinsic benefit to this. And what ended up happening, which is a really sad story as well, is a lot of these farmers, many of these farmers ended up committing suicide as a result of the conditions that were placed on them from this whole debacle. So with that said, cows themselves, the things that they are eating on farms are primarily soy, corn, canola, alfalfa, and sugar beets, which are all genetically modified. So no matter what way you look at this, we're eating GMO foods through the meats that we're eating. We're eating them through the packaged foods that we get in the grocery stores. Anything that you get, again, in Whole Foods, if you're on the buffet line and you get something that says soy in it, that's going to be genetically modified. We're getting a major inundation of toxins in our body unknowingly. And those same issues that you're seeing with the mice, that's basically what's happening on a level for human beings. We are bigger creatures, so perhaps it takes a longer time for us to actually get the health detriments from these. But ultimately, one thing worth pointing out is that the mice fed these GMOs, their lives correlated to a human life. When they started getting most of the problems, it was about, I believe, a year in, which, since they have a 2-year lifespan, which that basically means for us, it's going to take a generation or so to see the full effect of how bad this stuff really is. So we're only starting to see the problems associated with this manifesting in the 330 million people who live here right now. We're going to see probably a much bigger problem associated with this 20 years from now. And by that time, it'll be too late. So it's very, very important to avoid these things. Now, the reason that this stuff is actually in the food system in the first place is because of the FDA's way of approving things and testing. So unbeknownst to most people, this is the process that GMOs go through to go from FDA to your table. The FDA approves GMOs, as well as vaccines, new drugs, food additives. They do not approve compound drugs, cosmetics, medical foods, infant formula, and dietary supplements. But most importantly, they test nothing. They do not test any of these, of the GMOs. So when a GMO goes to the FDA for approval, they do not do their own testing. What they do is they rely on what's called voluntary consultation. This is done by the company itself. So if Monsanto, the company that makes genetically modified seeds, they bring their own data and say, this is what we found in our studies. And those pieces of data are given to the scientists at the FDA. They look over them and say, okay, looks good at the PowerPoint presentation, done. And then they send it right through. From there, it goes under an umbrella called GRAS, G-R-A-S, which stands for Generally Recognized as Safe. Once something goes under this label, it no longer needs any pre-market approval. There's no labeling requirement for packaged foods, and it goes right to your kitchen table. So this process right here is what allows GMOs to seamlessly end up in our bodies without us knowing it, as well as the initial lack of labeling altogether. And once again, Monsanto, this is the company associated with this primarily. They're the world's largest biotech company. They are responsible for most of this. And the reason why they are able to get this through is because there's a revolving door of people going through the US government and Monsanto's corporation. This is just a small list of literally dozens of people who have been back and forth between the US government and Monsanto. Michael Taylor, in 1976, he was the FDA's executive assistant to commissioner. In 1981, 5 years later, he became the head attorney of Monsanto. He then went back to the FDA as the deputy commissioner of policy in 1991, and then once again 5 years later back to Monsanto as their vice president, and then back as the food czar, the deputy commissioner of food in 2010 for the US government. So this guy's back and forth, and as a result, he is one of the main pieces that's been able to get a lot of this through seamlessly, once again, without letting the average American know it. Donald Rumsfeld, he was the Secretary of Defense in 2000 under the Bush administration. He was also the former CEO of Searle Pharmaceuticals in 1977, which was a subsidiary of Monsanto. And on. Clarence Thomas was another. He was the, of course, Supreme Court judge. A lot of people remember him. In 1991, he got in there. He was also the former attorney of Monsanto in 1975. This revolving door is the main problem itself. The system allows for this to go through in a very covert manner. And, you know, with this combined with the FDA's lack of actual oversight for this and doing their job, we're kind of left behind. And this basically leaves us with, what can we do? It's a pretty dire situation. The only way that we can really avoid these things is to be proactive ourselves. Eat organic. Anything that's certified organic cannot knowingly have GMO ingredients in it. And this sticker right here, the non-GMO verified sticker, when you see that on foods, I don't know if you can see that right there, it's kind of blue, green, and orange, and it says non-GMO project verified on it. When that's on a food product, that is basically the definite, this does not have GMOs in it. We don't have labeling of something having GMOs, but if this sticker is on a food product, we know that that food product doesn't have GMO in it because it was actually tested. And this organization is basically a band of farmers that got together that were sick of what was going on in the system and created their own process for testing on farms to see if there were GMOs that go into certain products. Another, eat grass-fed beef only, and also pastured chicken. So when you're eating chicken or eggs, any kind of poultry, you want it to be pasture-raised. For beef, grass-fed, and for fish, wild-caught. Avoid big brand names when in doubt, and also avoid laundry list products. So when you see something that's got 40 different ingredients and half of them look like something on an eye chart and you can't pronounce them, don't eat that. Don't put that into your body. And last but not least, join organizations. You know, if you can join and support the movements for, you know, trying to get this stuff labeled, that is huge, because at a grassroots level, this is really the only way that we're going to affect any change. Nothing politically has been done, so March Against Monsanto is always a great thing annually. Institute for Responsible Technology is a great organization that, through Jeffrey Smith, has disseminated a lot of this information. Organic Consumers Association, and GMO Free New Jersey. So with that said, keep yourself safe. Use this as an action plan to keep GMOs off of your food table, your dinner table, and please share this with your family and friends. And until next time, thank you for watching.